Hey, somebody needs to hide the microchip. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, the Professional Noticer is sponsored by Books for Veterans. The Veterans Administration in Washington, D.C. Asked for some books. And I said, sure, how many books you need? They said 10,000. I'm like, okay. Well, I'm personally donating as many as I can, but to reach 10,000, I need your help. What we're able to do to make that easier for you is for every $10 donation you make, a hardcover book will be sent to the VA for veterans, their families, and for the employees of the Veterans Administration. That $10 will cover the cost of the book, the shipping, and the handling. So whether you can make this a personal gift or a corporate donation, just go to andyandrews.com/veterans. And this can be added to a website purchase or done as an individual entry. And thanks so much for your support. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on The Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. And we have that today. You know, I'm a little aggravated at my guest already. I haven't even welcomed him on. This guy's a lot younger than I am. And I was aware of him 20 years ago because I read his first book and was just blown away. And so please welcome the writer of that book, the #1 New York Times Bestselling Author of 20 thrillers, including that first one, The Lions of Lucerne, Brad Thor. Hey, Brad, how are you?
Hi, Andy. I'm fine. Thank you. I'm glad to be with you. And I'm glad that you've been with me over the course of 20 years. So thank you.
Yeah, it just seems, I look at you and you're so young. It doesn't seem like I should have known you for 20 years. But I've been reading your stuff for 20 years. So, and just watching you everywhere. So I feel like I've kind of orbited you. And so it's awesome to meet you, and what a great day we have here. Is this number 20 that's being released today, or 21?
So it's 21 in my Scot Harvath series with that protagonist. And I always have to clarify for people that my books are like the James Bond movies. If a new one is in the theater and you've never seen a James Bond movie before, it's okay to go see the new one. It's okay to pick up my newest one, Rising Tiger, which is out today, July 5th. But yeah, I've got a lot of books in this series, but I write them so that they can stand alone. You don't need to have read any of the other ones to appreciate the latest one. Exactly.
Scot Harvath what a great character. And is he somebody that you kind of lugged around with you before you had the opportunity to flesh him out? Or did you just like say, okay, I've got an opportunity to write a thriller here, and I pick a cool name, Scott with 1 T?
There's an answer for everything in this. I'm convinced that James Bond was Ian Fleming's alter ego. Jack Ryan was for Clancy. Scot Harvath is for me to a large degree. And it's funny because his name Scott with 1 T, I named him after my brother because my mom did not want to see SCOTTTHOR. She didn't want 3 T's.
Right.
And I named him Scott. And a lot of readers asked me after that first book came out, why does he only have 1 T in Scott? And so I had to give him the middle name Thomas and say his mom didn't want to see 3 T's in a row. And then the Harvath name actually comes from a friend who works for the government who has been very active in prosecuting the war on terror and going after terrorists. So Harvath is a little bit of me and lots of other people who I know that are out there doing some of the nation's most dangerous business.
And of course, you're Brad with 1 D. So
1 D, yes,
exactly. It just makes sense that Scott would have 1 T. This, I've been a little, I guess, surprised that your books haven't been made into movies faster. And I don't mean to bring up anything that's negative.
No,
My books have
not
not
for
been
lack
made
of
into.
trying.
Yeah, well, I know that
Yeah,
too.
I mean, we've done tons of options in Hollywood, and with everyone, something's happened. We've got a deal cooking right now that is the best deal in my 20 years of being in business, the best team ever. I'm not allowed because I had to sign an NDA with the studio to say who all the people are involved, but I guarantee, like, I got my pick of directors, and I picked my favorite director because the producer said, you pick the director. And I said, anybody? And he goes, anybody. And I said, all right, I want this guy, biggest action director. I love him. And he said, give me 48 hours and I'll get him on the phone. And he did. And the director was a fan of the books. And so he's on board. So they teach you in law school, Andy, that sometimes the best deal is the deal you don't make. And my entertainment attorney out in LA said, Brad, I know it's been a tough road. I know we've come so close. You've kissed every frog in Hollywood looking for a prince. And I think we've got it this time. Knock on wood, Andy. And I'm looking forward to finally, we're hoping that towards the end of summer, we're going to have a big announcement as to who all the players are and what we've got in store for everybody with the books to film in Hollywood. But long time coming, but it's worth it. If we go to screen with this team, they're talking about bond-sized budgets and all that kind of stuff. So it's a big deal.
That's awesome. I didn't mean to bring up anything that may aggravate you. I've I've written a few books and I've gone through that same process too. And we don't have anything on the screen yet either. And so it's but my books are all over the map. You've got a character that deserves having movies made about.
It's the golden age for authors in Hollywood right now. So what was it? Friday night, July 1st, Amazon Prime started a series with Chris Pratt called The Terminal List, which is based on a thriller series by an author named Jack Carr, who's a really good friend of mine. And actually, I introduced Jack to my editor. So one of my best friends is a former Navy SEAL, and he reached out to me and said, hey, I've got this buddy of mine who's working on a book. Would you get on the phone with him and just talk to him and give him some pointers and everything? And I ended up talking to Jack on the phone, loved him, just a super, super guy. And I said, you know what, I'm going to help you. And he said, why? I said, well, I believe in helping other authors, but you also served our country honorably, and you're a little bit smarter than I am. He said, how do you know I'm smarter than you, Brad? And I said, well, you always wanted to be a Navy SEAL and an author. I always wanted to be an author and a Navy SEAL. You did it in the correct order. You were a Navy SEAL. Now you're an author. I wasn't that smart. I spun it around. So I said, you're smarter than I am. I'm going to help you. But so anybody who's watching this that didn't catch the premiere on Amazon Prime, go see it. It's a fabulous series. And I can't say enough good things about Jack Carr and his books. They're fabulous.
That is awesome. I am, I'm overwhelmed with a bunch of questions now. We're here on the day that this 21st Scot Harvath episode is being launched, and it's Rising Tiger. It's available now, and so just while you're watching this podcast, go ahead and order the book or send somebody to your local bookstore or whatever. But get the book. And I love talking to writers because there are probably stories you have and thoughts that you have about this profession that I think other people sometimes are a little surprised that we think a certain way or that we feel a certain way about it. And so since we're talking movies right now, I am curious, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being terrified and 1 just like dead calm, how nervous are you about what they're going to do with your book?
So that's interesting. It's a great question. A lot of it depends on how you structure your deal. So if you option the rights to a producer in Hollywood, then they can turn it into that Mel Brooks thing at the end of History of the World, Hitler on Ice. And you have no choice. In fact, I worked with a writer at one point that wanted to develop, didn't want to work with the books, wanted to develop his own idea. And I looked at it and I said, no, this is going to piss off, pardon my French, it's going to upset my readers. And so I learned to be very clear with the people I'm working with in Hollywood, is to say, I'm not here to teach you how to make movies or any of that. But
even though you could, because you went to Southern California.
I studied
you went
film
to
and
USC
television
with
production.
film degree. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but my thing is, listen, I want to help you guys make the best movie possible. You, by getting involved with my books, you're acquiring basically the Marvel style universe. It's 21 books. So I want to help you with the material. Nobody knows the universe better than I do, because I wrote it. What I want to make sure of, and this is where I'm clear, is this is my rice bowl. Whether the movie does well or doesn't do well, I'm still going to write more of these books. So either the movie's going to help or it's not, but I'm not going to let it hurt my books. So there's certain things that are off the table. You can't make my guy, a serial killer or this or that or any of this crazy stuff that Hollywood sometimes tries to spin it. So
you can't cast Tom Cruise because
as Jack
Tom
Reacher
is smaller than Scot Harvath. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So there's all that stuff and here's the other thing where I do have some advantage is that if we're going to do something with a streaming service, whether it's a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or Apple Plus, they are hoping that your readers will come and sign up and subscribe to the platform. Sure. So my thing is that's perfectly reasonable. If they don't already subscribe, I would expect that a lot of people would want to see this. So let's all work together to really make those readers happy. Let's make sure we don't change this and put in Tom Cruise for a 6'5" Jack Reacher. There's certain things, again, not trying to tell you how to make a movie, but let's put up some guardrails. And they've been very amenable to that.
That has been my slowdown too, because I've had those conversations, where I go in, I go, look, I don't have to have a movie made, to make my life complete. I don't have to have this made into a movie. And so, there are some things that are off the table. I've got a book called The Traveler's Gift that has been through treatment several times. And I've been in a room and I've said, look, you tell me how much you love the book, but you're changing what the character does for a living. You're changing where he travels. You're changing who he sees. And I mean, do your own movie.
Right. At that point, why do you need me? What do you need me for in my book?
Yeah. So, and I always, I think of Winston Groom. Winston was a friend of mine. He just passed away, I guess a little over a year ago, and lived down here. But, Winston wrote Forrest Gump, and and he got a great deal on the front end, but he didn't get any participation. And
that's rough.
And the movie did $1 billion. And so even though he got this great, the book had not even been on the bestseller list, and he got a great deal, but then nothing ever else. And so I've always thought, I don't care if I have any advance money, but I want some control on the script, and I want just points on the gross or whatever.
And I remember the story of Art Buchwald when he was complaining about the back end on Coming to America with Eddie Murphy. I think Monkey Points was how he used the term, because it was such a ridiculous definition by the studios of what constitutes profit and everything. Listen, anything you do, whether it's starting a business with partners, buying or selling real estate, it pays to have a good team around you. And that's my entertainment attorney has become one of my best friends, and he is an absolute genius, and he's really good about all this stuff. So it doesn't matter. Anytime contracts are involved, it's worth it to invest in a knowledgeable attorney. Most of the time, I wouldn't spit on an attorney if they were on fire, but there's some good ones out there, and those are the ones you want on your side of the table.
So what is your process for writing? How do you? I think this is a question I get asked a lot, and And I wonder if you feel like I do, in that, I have people that they'll say, "Hey, one day I want to write a book," and I'll say, "Well, when are you going to get going?" And they'll say, "Well, when I'm just kind of waiting for the inspiration to hit." I'm kind of like, I am inspired to write a book when I have the idea, but after that, it's discipline. It's just
it's absolute discipline, and it's so funny you should use that example, Andy, because I remember the first time I met Harlan Coben, who is a great thriller author, and he's
never
just
met
a
him.
funny guy. And I was at a book party, and Steve Forbes. It was a book that he had done with a great history writer from Florida named John Previs. And it was lessons from kind of history's greatest leaders and then how you can apply them to business. And Harlan and I met, and we joked around about what it was like to go to cocktail parties as the only author in the room. And he said, "Have you ever heard this joke?" And I said, "Yeah." And he told it. And I knew the joke about a guy who's at the eye doctor's, and the doc's looking at his eyes, and the doctor says, "I see in your chart that you're an author." "Well, that's funny, because when I retire from being an eye surgeon, I'm going to be an author." And the author laying there goes, "Well, that's really funny, because when I retire from being an author, I'm going to be an eye surgeon." As if all you need is time.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you get it. It really is seat of pants to seat of chair. And Jack London once said, "You cannot wait for inspiration. You have to go after it with a club." And that's true. I do a book a year, and it's all about self-discipline.
What a great quote. I had not heard that.
Yeah,
That
the
is
London
a great
quote
quote.
is great. Yeah.
So, and I forget who it was that said this, but it was somebody that had like 50 New York Times bestsellers. And they said, "Yeah, the first one was inspiration, but the rest have been discipline,"
Yeah.
And
Perspiration.
yeah. Yeah. Hey, you know what? You have the greatest writer's credit and I'm a collector of odd things, admittedly. Okay, but you have the greatest writer's credit that I have come across.
What's that?
You had a book that was banned by a country.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I mean, what? Because wasn't the Last Patriot banned in Saudi Arabia?
Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Yeah. So that book was very interesting, because so I like to take things that are happening in the real world and then include them in my fiction. And what had happened with The Last Patriot was that German scientists were brought into Yemen, were invited to Yemen, because when they were doing repairs on their big mosque in Yemen, they found all these parchments and all these writings that were sealed up in the ceiling of this mosque. And they brought the Germans in to date them and figure out where they were from and everything. And they realized that these were missing parts of the Quran. Now, if you are of the Muslim faith and you are very devout, you believe that the Quran is a perfect copy of a perfect book in heaven. It's impossible for the Quran to have chapters that didn't make it into the final edit, if you will. And in fact, if you look back at the historical records, some of Muhammad's companions who were putting together the Quran actually set a deadline and told their disciples, "Stop bringing us things Muhammad had said. Friday, 5:00, no more after that." And
He can have said no more.
Yeah, no more. And I thought this would make a really interesting basis for a thriller, kind of a Indiana Jones national treasure sort of a thing set in present day, because the way the Muslim faith works, even if Muhammad said something today and it contradicted something from months or years ago, he would say to his disciples, "What I say today wipes out that stuff before, it abrogates it." So I thought, what if there's a missing chapter that could completely turn the religion on its head and basically wipe out any standing for the radicals who do terrorism and things like that. So it was a really great book. It got very well reviewed. It was my first #1. And you can't find it at the local Piggly Wiggly or Publix in downtown Riyadh. It does not exist. You won't find it on the shelves there.
It's amazing to me that, that you would do that book anyway, because it's like, Brad, do you have like a death wish? I mean,
I heard from a lot of people, Andy.
If you say something bad about the Methodists, they're just gonna like maybe not let you not let you eat the banana pudding after the service. But these guys will kill you.
Yeah, you know what? It did. We did get some scary threats, and it caused us to move and to take some steps toward our security. We had some very, very good people, very knowledgeable that work in that realm, keeping politicians safe and so on and so forth, that said, we want you to take these steps and all that kind of thing. And at the end of the day, they didn't think some Muslim nation was going to send anybody here to cause trouble for me or my family. But what they were worried about was a homegrown radical like
Right.
downtown Chicago who's looking for a target, who's maybe communicating with an imam overseas, and that imam says, well, give me a list of 5 things you could do downtown Chicago. And I could have been on that list, and it would have just been a nice PR coup for the radicals. But I'm still here years later, still kicking. So,
I haven't had a book banned by a country, but I've had a chapter banned.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. My book, The Traveler's Gift, is a story about a family going through a tough time, and the dad gets to travel through time, meeting with 7 historical figures who are going through a tough time of their own. He gets to be with Anne Frank in the annex and King Solomon right after he says, "Bring me the sword and I'll tell you whose baby this is." But he gets to go and be with Harry Truman while Truman's determining how to end the war and if he's going to use this thing that nobody knows about at this point. And so when the book hit and started getting the foreign stuff and all, Japan put out The Traveler's Gift and the 6 decisions that because the Harry Truman chapter's not in there.
Oh, isn't that fascinating? Okay, so that's very similar. You were silenced in another country.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just a chapter. I just had a chapter banned. You had a whole book. So,
well, you were the only other author that I've met that has had any sort of similar distinction. So it's a very small club. We should get like gold jackets.
We should. Mine would be smaller than yours, I guess. But so we're talking to Brad Thor, the author of Rising Tiger, out today. This is the 21st Scot Harvath book, and this character is just awesome, Brad. I wish, everybody seems to want to team everything up, and they'll do the Spider-Man movie and then this, and then they'll put them together, and and I was thinking about having you on, and I thought, I would love to see a movie with Scot Harvath, Jack Reacher, Mitch Rapp, and the Gray Man.
And the Gray Man, Mark Greaney. Well, first of all, before I forget, in 10 nights from tonight, the Gray Man movie premieres. That's a Netflix project. So this is a big month for us thriller writers, with Terminal List having started on Friday on Amazon Prime, and The Gray Man on the 15th of August on Netflix. So, yeah. You know what? I've had a lot of fans show up on Facebook and say it would be so cool to have, everybody loves these protagonists, these heroes, and they would love to see them team up in some sort of a thing. And it'd probably be cool. I know Mark Greaney, who writes The Gray Man. Mark and I are very friendly. He lives in Memphis, not far from me here in Nashville. And then what's really, really funny is I knew Vince before his untimely passing, but Kyle Mills, who took over the Mitch Rapp books, has been a friend of mine since before I was an author.
And he does an awesome job.
He's brilliant and a super guy.
Job.
Yeah.
My son is going to freak out when he finds out Mark Greaney lives in Memphis. My son, my 22-year-old, lives in Memphis, and he's a big Gray Man, Scot Harvath fan, and so, yeah.
So Mark always kicks off his book events at a bookstore called Novel in Memphis. That's the name of the bookstore, Novel. So he does a lot of stuff with that bookstore there. So your son should get on their mailing list so he knows when Mark's going to be in. Because he does a lot of things there in Memphis. So that's cool that your son's a fan of Mark's. So that's going to be a neat movie because is it Chris Evans? It's Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling in The Gray Man. So the trailer looks fantastic. And that's the rising tide. I mean, I have really high hopes, not only for my friends who wrote these books, Jack Carr, The Terminalist, and Mark Greaney, but it bodes well for my entire genre. So if their projects do well, film and or television in the case of Terminalist, and film on Netflix with The Gray Man, that's a rising tide. There's going to be more call for more entertainment product from our genre. So that's good for all of us.
So let me ask you this before I let you go. A couple more things. One is, what are your experiences with the audibles of what? I mean, are you happy with the voices? And
so with my books, I've had a long-standing relationship with my narrator, who's named Armin Schultz, and Army is fantastic. People say to me, "Why don't you narrate it?" And I said, "Because I got a Broadway trained actor who could do a different voice for each character."
Right.
Remember it. If I was writing nonfiction, I'd probably be comfortable reading my own stuff. But for fiction, no. You need somebody who can really do the voices. And our guy Army is just fabulous. I have to tell you a really quick funny story is that he's a really handsome guy and he does a lot of television commercials. And I wasn't aware that he did TV commercials. And I was in my kitchen cooking one morning. And so this guy's the voice of my protagonist, right?
Right. And he's
Scot Harvath.
He's done every book, right?
Yes. Yeah, he's done all the books. So I've got the TV on one morning and I'm cooking breakfast. And all of a sudden, I hear Scot Harvath getting my attention and saying he cares about me and he wants to talk about my cholesterol. I'm whipping up some eggs and everything. I'm like, what? And I look up and there is Army on screen dressed like a doctor standing in Central Park in front of a mirror where strangers can walk up in front of the mirror and see their cholesterol number. It was some, cholesterol medication commercial, but it was kind of funny. I'm yelling to my wife going, Scot Harvath wants me to watch my cholesterol. And my wife goes, so does your wife.
That is so funny. The fact that you keep the continuity with the voice. I listen to a lot of Audible. I listen to a ton of that.
A lot of people do. It's huge.
And it's a way. I'm so ADD. It's a way I can direct my attention. And so it drives me nuts when I'm on a series.
Oh yeah.
And then
they switch.
All of a sudden, it's a different. There's a series that I found, and I have no idea. And you probably go, oh, he lives next door to me. But the guy's name is Archer Mayer, and he writes books about a Vermont murder detective, and they're mysteries. They're really, really, really good. But they have a guy narrating it, a guy named Tom Taylorson, who is one of the best that I've heard, and I've heard tons of them, And then, like book number 14, it's like another guy, and I feel horrible for the guy because I didn't listen. I thought I'm just gonna have to read this one, and then I go on and I look, and there people are like ruined by narration. This is horrible. And
people are devoted. And I'll tell you what. So Audible is huge for me. It is one of the biggest growing channels for publishers. And the narrators themselves, Andy, will have fan bases that will follow. That'll be more loyal to the narrator than to the author, and they'll follow them from book to book, regardless of who wrote it.
Yeah,
it's fascinating stuff.
You've got this one guy, and I do my own, and so I haven't had the anguish of listening to it and hear words mispronounced, but that drives me nuts.
I don't ever have to worry about that. My team is so professional, and if they don't know, they find out, and then they call me to double check. So I'm always on standby when they're in the booth recording, because I have a lot of foreign words and phrases and names and all this kind of stuff. And they will reach out and say phonetically, like, first of all, can you record it on your iPhone and send it to us?
Yeah.
How does it sound in your head when you say it? Is that your interpretation of it, or is that exactly how? So it's very collaborative with the audio people. They are absolute fabulous masters at Simon & Schuster Audio. I love my team.
And see, I don't know how this happens sometimes, because I'm like, I'm in there, I'm in the booth with the Harper Audio guy, and I wrote the book, and sometimes I will mispronounce something, and he'll go, and I'm like, oh, okay. And so he'll catch me. And so
Yeah.
I listen to some that I just like, who's listening to this? Is anybody
Right.
listening? So,
Yeah. Well,
anyway, man, I appreciate so much your time. I just wish you nothing but the best with Rising
Thank
Tiger. And how can people get up with you, Brad?
So the best way is to come to bradthor.com, BRADTHOR.com. I have a lot of stuff on my website, not only how to find me on social media, but I put up lots of interesting things around the books, around writing, all that kind of stuff. It's not just straight book. So there's a lot of fun stuff at bradthor.com.
Awesome. Well, we will put all the links on the show notes, and we appreciate you being with us.
It's great seeing you, Andy. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing that tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Decoder rings for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional funding provided by the Association of Mississippi Grit Farmers. Are you from the South? If so, you probably eat grits with breakfast on a regular basis. Perhaps you hail from a northern state and only encounter grits occasionally at a Cracker Barrel or a Waffle House when your family's traveling. Either way, have you said thank you to a grit farmer lately? Grit farmers are men and women from all backgrounds, rugged, resourceful individuals who are the unsung heroes of breakfast. 365 days a year, they carefully tend their grit orchards. During extreme heat or freezing weather, young grit trees become vulnerable to damage. Mature trees fail to produce, and an entire year's work is at risk. But this, friends, is where the grit farmer springs into action. Bonfires in the winter and huge fans in the summer, along with all-night prayer vigils just to make it to harvest time. But when harvest time comes, oh, what a celebration. And everyone joins in. The farmers, the migrant workers who pick the grits by hand, and of course the accountants whose job it is to count each grit as it comes off the tree. Did you know that every 5-pound bag you buy at the supermarket contains exactly 942,600 grits? And they've been packaged just for you. So the next time you see a grit farmer, shake his hand and say thank you. This message brought to you by the Association of Mississippi Grit Farmers with a grant from the American Grit Council.